All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Church Encourager podcast. Dad, really enjoying the series so far with Kingdom Alignment. And we talked about generosity this last weekend. And you know what I appreciated? A lot of times I think when people go to church and they hear a generosity talk, it all comes about money. And it is some about money, but it's also about other things. And, you broadened the definition of generosity beyond money to include things like our time, our attention, being encouraging, being kind with our words, our listening and our presence. Do you find any of those more natural than others? And what would you say is the most challenging for us?
Yeah, and that I think will change over the course of your life. I did say that I tend to put a lot more value on time
Mm-hmm.
now. Not that I'm out, but I'm 66, and so you tend to look at how there was always time when I was 30, right? It just seemed never ending, but that sort of changes, and yet so it becomes one of the most important things that you have to be willing to give, and you, you know I feel like I've been blessed because very early on as a believer, within a few weeks, for whatever reason, with me, with no church background, I had sort of asked what is this giving thing supposed to look like? When somebody, it wasn't even anybody in leadership, said, what, 10% is sort of what it looks like biblically. And I just went with it because that seemed better than what I was paying when I was serving the other guy.
Yeah.
And so that's just always been a part. But for some people, that's really difficult. And then they feel like the church, is just hammering that message to people. And that all has to come. Generosity has to come from a place of gratitude, not from guilt or manipulation. So I like to talk about, those general terms. So for me, the financial part has just been a part of our makeup. It's just what we do. We always have. I got saved over 40 years ago now, and it's just always been. That's what we do. It wasn't even a question. So there's some freedom in that. But beyond that, that doesn't mean you don't have to do other things, right? So you're looking for his heart is what's generous, and sometimes it can be challenged to listen, and yet that's something that people desperately need. And I will have to tell myself sometimes it's very important right now that you listen here. Don't check out. Don't get busy doing other things. What's required right now is for you to stay in a moment and listen. And so that is a decision we have to sometimes make. I mentioned sometimes words, having just encouraging words are so important, particularly in our close relationships. With our family and our friends and those people right around us, that it's so important that we don't get stingy with a kind word or an encouraging word or a promising word, or, and how important it is to tell your kids, you're proud of them, and, they keep. So sometimes we think that stuff is assumed, and it's important. I think it's important to tell people you appreciate what they're doing, right? We're just who they are. There's all those things matter and shouldn't just be assumed. So, so I think it's all of those things sort of wrapped in. And all of this is a heart change, because the whole point is that's what God wants, is a heart change from us. He wants to connect with us relationally, not just here's the rules, do them, and that's what it looks
Right.
like.
Yeah.
It's never meant to be that sort of a thing. So we'll find out even more next week, because you're going to be talking about prayer. At the heart of that is this desire for relationship. So I think it's going to be good.
Yeah, there's a tie-in between the message you just preached and the message I'll be preaching this weekend about that secret place. Matthew 6:4 says that the Father sees what is done in secret, as we'll talk about in the next passage. Like, go pray, close the door, pray to your Father. There's something about that secret place that God sees what's done there. How does knowing that God sees our hidden acts He sees behind closed doors, if you will. How does that change our motivation for being generous?
Yeah, because again, you I don't think we want to give for appearance sake, and we don't want to give because we feel like we're guilted into it. It has to come from a place of gratitude, which I think is very internal. I've had for years, people get, well, how did the whole right hand know what the left hand's doing? And how do you do that? And we've had discussions, with people about what does that mean that I should give in cash, in an envelope with no name on it. And I'm like, no, I mean, it's the motivation behind it. Right. And, I think having your giving recorded makes sense for tax purposes, if nothing else. That's not the issue. It's not the thing was that what he wants is to make sure we get a heart change, that he gets a heart change. Because if you just go, well, okay, what's the rule for? Okay, I'll do the rule,
Right.
but you don't engage your heart, you miss the point. And um, and so he's always looking for that. That's why the secret place, because next week he'll say, go into your room and pray. And the focus there isn't room. I know people have places, and I'm not saying that's bad, but the focus it's the motivation behind it. You need to go and spend some time with the Lord. And that's what all of these things ultimately are about, giving, fasting, and prayer. They're all about deepening our relationship with the Lord. That's not doing those things for the sake of doing them, is that they all sort of help us get closer to the Lord and have a heart change, which is the sort of whole thing that he's going after here. And so all of that, when you read Matthew 6, so if you don't hang on to that tension, it looks like what he's telling us to do is this is how you become more righteous. The Pharisees do these things better than them. When the reality is it's not about performing them at all. It's allow these things to change your heart from the inside out so that we can have that kind of relationship with God.
Really good. That's everything. It's not, what do I have to do to earn it kind of a deal? Because I think most of us would be like, how much is it going to cost me to get into heaven? And, really it's the answer is, well, it's everything. and you still need Jesus. Right.
Yeah.
So there's no, like,
Yeah.
10% doesn't buy your way into heaven. It's a result of the heart being God's and saying, it's all yours, Lord. And I trust you and I can live with, the 90%, and I don't need to live at 130% of my income. And, that's the trap people get into. And anyway, that's a talk for later on in this series, I'm sure. And that's a hard lesson to learn too, I will say. So want to be sensitive.
Takes a long time.
It takes a long time to
So
learn it.
don't judge people. I
No.
I get to I always try and approach this particular area very sensitively because of how much damage has been done.
Mm.
And I don't want that. When Pastor Kevin was in the pulpit a few weeks ago, he said some of the three things people that don't go to church think about, that all the church wants is your money.
Yeah.
And that was one of the three. That it was going to be boring, irrelevant, and all they want is your money, right? I think those are the things he said. But and so I have never wanted that to be the thing. I say this some about money because we live in a world that takes money to do things, but it's ultimately about this relationship that we want to cultivate with God that far surpasses any of the other stuff. So it's a tension like everything else. It's the cultural push. And the picture, culturally, we're like this. We hold on to everything tight. Like, oh, I gotta, and God wants us more. I'm trying to get to my camera like this. And the thing is, when you're this way, it's very hard to receive all the cool stuff coming from God. You're kind of relying in your own self. But when you open, then you realize it's all from Him anyway. Everything is from Him. The very next breath that we take, it's a gift. And so if you can get your heart transformed around that, then everything flows in a much different way because it's less about, well, this is what I'm giving, and more about, well, this is what God is sort of flowing through me. And by His great goodness and mercy, He lets me to have, enough to meet my needs because that's what He's all about. He says it in there. He wants you to be at a spot where you can live, where generosity is who you are, because he's got you and it's good. Because there is something that, I put that verse in there where Paul records Jesus saying, it's more blessed to give than to receive. It really is. There's something in it that allows you to experience the kingdom life in a way that very few other things will let you, is that, oh, look, he's got me and it's okay.
Really good stuff. That closed-handed thing, like I'm going to do it on my own sort of mentality is what it's at. And, I can relate to time. Like, don't make me sacrifice a day off because they're few and far between asking for help, moving. Or is that, you know what I mean? When it's like, it's hard to be there. Sometimes you have to move people. Sometimes you have to help in certain situations, and just trusting in God that he's got you. It's hard. It's hard to get there and trust, but he has us, and he's the author of eternity, which is, it's reassuring, but I love a day off too.
And there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, he created us to have one.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the people get all caught up about Sabbath, and then they try and rule it out of being enjoyable. But it was the reason that we're supposed to take a day like that a week is that it's a foreshadowing of new creation, and that he wants you every week to think about the fact of he's coming and everything is going to be, you won't have to work.
Yep.
And yet we've got it so mixed up. We almost feel like, well, if we don't work, we're not going to make it, which sort of is a point of who you're trusting, which is why I love like some of those big organizations that take Sundays off on purpose and still seem to do really well, like contrary to everything in the culture, right? Like,
closed on Sundays. You're my Chick-fil-A. I mean, that's
yeah. And it's like,
sorry to quote Kanye West there.
And yet it's a great, they seem to do
they're always busy. It'll be like 3:00 on a Tuesday, and the line is just
there's something
full.
Biblical about trusting and taking a break that resets everything.
Yeah.
And yet that's not, we always think,
push.
It should be open 24/7, right? And that's not how it works.
But I think this was a great message. I'm looking forward to this weekend. I'm looking at the rest of the questions, and I think we've kind of covered them all in this podcast and talked about them. One of the questions is when we were in the COVID season, and you kind of explained that this weekend. And, I can remember really having to trust God in that season. And like, it allowed us to make some changes here that were cool, but there's still like, we changed, and there's the having to deal with the change is sometimes sad too. But good, sad, just holding it all, giving it all to the Lord. And when it's time to let go of things, just being generous, letting go, and trusting that God meets us there, whether it's, COVID or hurricane, or when things are really rocking and rolling, trusting in God no matter what, and just being generous and open-handed is where it all happens.
There was I didn't share this part, but when we decided to, okay, well, because we weren't having church, which is a pretty big thing for a church, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, we all.
How are we gonna make this work? And we trusted God, and we felt like being generous. So we picked for that first month a pretty significant amount that we were going to invest in giveaways.
Mm-hmm.
I won't go into it, but it was significant. And the next day, that amount showed up.
Wow.
I mean, it was ridiculous. And the following month, we had a little bit of that first amount left. So I lessened the amount a little, not much, but a little. I said, we'll give, because we were buying. People don't get meals.
It was fresh food. We were packaging it. It was.
And so I said, okay, well, this month we're going to do that. And I didn't announce it. It was like, if I might have told a couple people on staff, but it didn't go around. And I said it, and that afternoon, that amount came in again. So it's funny when, there's, and I certainly didn't do that for that. We were doing that, right? But I'm often amazed at how uh, I don't know. That seems to just do that very often. Like, okay, we're gonna, we're not sure. We don't have the doors open. Everything's changed. We can't take up offerings, but we'll go ahead and give away this much this month. And like, boom, there it was. And it happened twice. So I think that's fascinating.
God is generous, and, generosity begets generosity. The more you give to others, the more they give. It spreads out. And it changes hearts. Just, when someone's generous to you, you're like, you can hardly believe it. And just when, God makes it happen like that, you're astounded, but then why are we astounded? We know God does things, but it just every time it like catches us off guard.
Like, wow. Oh, wow. Look at that.
Oh my goodness. Really? He's really doing okay. And then we still have doubts, and we have to work through that. Like he's done amazing things, and okay, now what?
Well, it's I know we sometimes will make fun of the Israelites for having walked through the Red Sea and then complaining on the other side. 2 days later, now we're thirsty and we miss. And you
we
think,
should
well,
be back in Egypt.
Like
at least they had salt there,
we're just like that.
Oh yeah.
Well, that was 2 days ago. What about
could
today?
this happen to me now? It's amazing how relatable the scripture is, even just that narrative of them, and how much of the human condition is wrapped in that story, and how desperately they need Jesus, how desperately we need Jesus.
Yes.
It all starts there, and generosity is one of the ways we can reflect Jesus. And great message. Loved it, Dad. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us in this series. I'm looking forward to starting the next part of this series where we look more into the prayer part of it, and that's impactful. Just imagine what our lives would be like, where before our meetings, we just spend 5 minutes with the Lord of heaven and earth asking for help, just those kinds of things, and trusting in him. So anyway, I'm looking forward to the sermon next weekend. Everybody listening, thank you so much. We love you all. God bless you. Check out our Thursday podcast, the Bible Institute one. It's a good one. And we'll be up with Kingdom Alignment Part 3 this weekend as well at Keys Vineyard Church. See you later.